Hi everyone, this is a requested video from a friend I have met off of the hapa subreddit. He wanted to know exactly how my father was when I was growing up and what kind of influenced me to be, in his words, woke. I'm not a huge fan of that word, but I totally get it and it's what we use now, so I'm not sure exactly. I don't know if I can pinpoint exactly why I'm not self-hating, because I know there's a lot of self-hating Asians and hapas out there, and I guess he wanted me to share with you guys maybe my experience will give some insight. I'm not sure. I can't really tell you exactly why I'm attracted to Asian guys, but he wanted to know the kind of father I had, and my father being a very alpha Asian. So anyways, we can start with, my father was very young. He had mentioned that, like, my father's only like 20 years older than me, and so he was like 19, 20 when I was born. And when I was really small, probably till around 8, we were really, really close. But then, you know, he started getting more girlfriends, and when you're that age, you start realizing your parents are divorced and all you want is your mum to be with your dad. It's just like this instinct, and you're kind of predisposed to not liking anyone your mother or your father gets with, because you think they should be together because they made you, so they should be together. So I had a hard time, especially with my dad being very sought after. He had a lot of girlfriends. A few of them I really liked, a few of them I didn't like so much, but he was always a very strong presence in my life. Even though I didn't always live with him full time, he was in my life pretty much all the time. So there was a time where we all lived together with my grandparents, like my father, my grandparents, my great-grandmother. That's very normal too in a pure Asian household. And then there was a time where my father was living down the street, and I was kind of like back and forth to his place, and when I'd fight with him I'd go to my grandparents. And then my dad got arranged when I was 13, 14, and then my stepmother came over, and then my grandmother was like, you need to live with them, you know, this is your chance to have a family and live with actual 2 parents, because that's going to be best for you. But that was difficult because my stepmother and I clashed and we really didn't get along. But my father had only ever dated white girls after my mother, and then he ended up getting arranged with an Asian girl. He was always very, it's like, even though we had a very brother-sister relationship, when I was kind of hitting the tween stage, I always had a very strong bond with him, because no matter how much we clashed, I could always talk to him. And yeah, he can be a dick, and he knows that, and you know, he's somewhat arrogant, this and that, but he's extremely intelligent, he's funny, and there's no negotiation with my father, and that's the problem too. I was a very difficult child. I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't angelic either. And being a child of divorce, obviously I had my moments, you know. I was an angry child because I was obsessed with my parents' divorce. Like, I was just upset. I wanted them to be together, and you just don't understand why they're not. Anyway, my dad did a really good job at being both my mum and dad, but he was, it was more of a tough love type of thing. Like, he did not coddle me. But when I was little, like maybe 4, 5, 6 years old, he was my hero. I used to think he was a ninja because he used to play that off, and he told me he was a ninja, and literally all I would draw were pictures of him and me, like him and I in ninja outfits with stars and nunchucks, and he had stars and nunchucks in his room, so it was completely believable. And he's built and muscular and tall, so I immediately thought, yeah, he's a ninja. It was so believable, and all my friends believed him too. Until we were older and we found out he wasn't, and then he admitted it to me, and I was kind of like, And I was like so sad, but it was fine. I'm over it. He was always, to me, he was very strict, especially for being a second generation Asian, meaning he was born and bred in Canada. He's very Western, but we still have a very strong grasp of our culture in our family. And so that means he speaks Taishan, the whole family speaks Taishanese, even though all of his siblings, all six, he's one of six, all of them are born in Canada, born and raised, and they all speak fluent Taishanese, and we all know everything there is to know about our culture. And that's why I was raised so saturated, because my family is, and even though they're born in a Western country, they're still very, very knowledgeable into about the culture. So, but for Western standards, having a Western Asian father, he was strict. Like, I wasn't allowed to sleep over at my friends' houses. They weren't allowed to sleep over at mine. I think he allowed it maybe 3 times ever. My girlfriend did sleep over at my house once when I was 11, and she was my best friend, and I was able to sleep over at her house once for a birthday party, and then another friend when we were like 13 for a birthday party. But he vetted everyone that would be there. He didn't trust anyone's boyfriends or husbands, like the boyfriends and husbands of my friends' mothers. He was extremely protective over me, and so I was naturally really afraid of him, not because he was mean and horrible, but you didn't want to make him angry. We all have quite fiery tempers in our family, and the big issue too is that he always thought that I was like a carbon copy of him. He always thought I was lying, even though I wasn't. I never lied to my father. I can say that to this day because I respected him so much, and I would never ever want to piss him off. Like, yeah, you don't want to piss my father off. And it's just like one of those things. He only ever spanked me once, and it was really traumatic, and it didn't really hurt. I'm sorry, if you're ethnic, you're gonna get beat. But he didn't, it didn't hurt, but it was the gesture that killed me inside. So there was this girl that was with us at the time, staying with us, and they were on the verge of like breaking up. They had already broken up, and she was like trying to hold on to the relationship, and I don't know, I couldn't understand why. I was only like 9 or 10, but she had lied and said I did something that I didn't do. And he was furious, and literally he got so angry because every time he asked me what happened, I told him, and that didn't go in line with her story. Me being the kid, obviously I was written off as a liar. He fucking chased me upstairs, locked me in his room, and fucking ran around chasing me until he cornered me and spanked me. And then he said, and he was crying while he was spanking me, had tears in his eyes, like he had such a problem doing that. And I was more traumatized because I was watching my father build up these tears while he was spanking me. And then he said, now tell me the truth. And I still said the same thing, and then he realized I wasn't lying, and he just grabbed me and he was like rocking me, and he's like my baby. And then we went downstairs, and he fucking gave her shit and told her to get out. That's the story. That's the only time he ever hit me, and that was the last time. But it didn't really hurt, but it was the gesture, the experience that really, really it was traumatic at that moment, but it was fine after. But that's what I had to go through for him to realize that I was telling the truth. But it was tough because, you know, growing up, he just assumed I was just like him. He thought I was a great liar, and I was good at lying when I was a kid, but I never lied to him. Never lied to him. I would never do that. I just have way too much respect for my father to ever lie to him. Okay, let's fast forward to my 11th. It was my 11th or 12th, but it was my 11th birthday. So my father used to have really big parties for me every birthday. Like, because he's a French gourmet chef, he would create a menagerie out of food, all the fruits and just beautiful animals, and he used to always make this working, like functioning well out of a watermelon with the fruit punch inside, and the basket would come up and it was amazing. And this year though, he had rented out a party room at the Ambassador. The Ambassador is like this, it feels old school now, but I mean back then in the 90s it was like the coolest place you could have your birthday, because it has an indoor water slide. So he rented that out for my friends and I. And in the party room there's this like long rectangular table, and I was at one end and he was at the other end, like, you know, kind of far from each other. And I was opening my gifts with all my friends around me, and his girlfriend at the time, this blonde girl, she was nice, I liked her, got me my first bikini. It was kind of attached at the side, but it was pretty much bikini. It was leopard. And I was really excited opening it. I was like, oh my god, it's like a grown up, I'm so cool, I've got this bikini. He fucking lost it. He was like tripping over all the chairs because they're like kid chairs, and he's tall and he's tripping over and he's trying to get to me and he's like, no, and he grabbed it and he's like, you're not wearing that. And then his girlfriend started arguing with him like, well, Keith, she's, you know, she's just a kid, and you know, she's 11, it's her birthday and it's cute. He goes, it's not cute, she's not wearing that. And now that I look back, I totally understand. He's protecting me and he didn't want to sexualize me when I was 11 years old, and that's understandable, because now that I'm older, I wouldn't want my kid wearing a sexy bikini either. It was kind of risque looking, but he was that kind of dad, and he was really funny. It was like slow motion. He was like flying over the chairs and he grabbed it. And I never saw it again. I think he burned it and chucked it in the trash or something, or flushed it down the toilet. He got rid of it. It's dead, long gone, never saw it again. I was really devastated. But anyways, then we fast forward to my first date, which he didn't know was date, okay? So I didn't per se lie to him about this, but I just didn't tell him that I was dating this guy. I was kind of seeing him. He wasn't really a boyfriend, but I liked him and he was interested in me. I was 15 and he was 18. That's a big deal, like when you're in that stage of life in your teens. We had this movie night thing going on at my friends, and I promised my father that I would call him at 11. I didn't call him till 1. And then I said I was coming home soon, and I came home at 3 because I was an irresponsible, empty-headed, stupid 15-year-old. When the car pulled up to the driveway, my friends were dropping me off, all I could see at the front door was his 6'2" built silhouette in the window with his hands cusped, looking left, looking right, frantically. And the light shining behind him because of the lights inside. And it was the most terrifying thing ever, and I was dreading approaching the door. He had been fucking waiting there probably since I called him, because I didn't live that far from my friends. I told my friends to drop me off like kind of down a few cars from my house because I didn't want him to see there were boys in the car, whatever. I ran out, I got out, I was like, drive away, drive away. As soon as I got in, he fucking had the biggest go at me, and he was swearing, and oh my god, he had never been so angry. He was livid, he was fucking furious, and we had a big fight. And I was never allowed to go out again at night at that hour. So as you can see, my father was extremely, like, what he says he means. And if you say something, he's gonna hold you to it. He's a man of his word, and he's always been. When I was a teenager, things just spiraled downhill, you know, his marriage, and his wife and I didn't get along, and all this power struggle. I was kind of rebellious. I wanted to do all kinds of things. I like sprayed my entire furniture in my room black without any protection of the carpet, and I fucked the carpet up, and I didn't think it was a big deal, and he was furious. I was doing a lot of stupid shit like that. Now that I'm older, I realize that he had a right to be angry, and I understand why he was as livid as he was. So we had our ups and downs who doesn't with their parents? And he was also very, like, he made me have a thick skin because he's so funny, but he can take the piss till you cry. Like, he would make fun of me, but he makes fun of everyone. But when you're like an insecure kid, it's like, oh my god. But I actually think it did me good because it built character, and I didn't grow up thinking I was the shit. Like, I wasn't arrogant, I wasn't entitled, and I'm quite a humble person. So, and I think it's because of him. And he's equally rough on my brother. He's really rough on my brother. My brother has Asperger's, but he's like second in his entire school. He works his ass off because he knows he has Asperger's, but you can't really tell. The only it's very mild on the spectrum, so it's like very, very mild, and you can't really tell unless like you're with him for a while. And there's, you know, sometimes he can speak louder than an average indoor voice or whatever, but he's brilliant. I love my brother so much, and he's amazing. He's lovely, he's intelligent, and he's so much like my father. And my father's his hero, which is great. And he comes back with the wittiest things. But my father was extra rough on him, and I mean rough as in he makes sure he dishes out a lot so my brother's able to take it. And my brother has the best comebacks ever. Like, oh my god, the things my dad will say to him and then the things I'll say back. I'm like, oh my god, totally ripping the piss out of my father, which is great. And that's what my dad wanted, because he knew that when he gets out into the real world, kids are cruel and they're going to make fun of my brother, you know, because he's not the average kind of kid. He's autistic and he's going to have to deal with a lot. But because of my father, my brother has such a thick skin and he can handle anything, and he knows my dad's joking half the time too, so they rip the piss out of each other, and it's really cute seeing them together because they're like a bunch of funny teenagers, the way they act. And my brother's very well adjusted and turned out amazingly well. He gets straight A's and he's got good friends, and he's gonna go to university soon. I'm really, really proud of him. But yeah, and my dad had apologized to me after the whole... I moved in with my mother when I was 15. There were so many problems at home at the time because my father and I were just butting heads all the time. And he actually wrote me this email like a year later saying that he apologized for not being the perfect father and not being as understanding as he could be. And that meant a lot to me. I like printed it out. And that's what I really, really appreciate and cherish about my father, is that, you know, we may not have gotten along all the time, but I have always been able to reach him emotionally, and if he was ever wrong, he'd apologize. And I was very close to him in that sense. Even when we were fighting, he'd come into my room and give me my dinner. And of course your parents should feed you, but he would always remind me, he said, just because you're angry at me doesn't mean you can't tell me to make you dinner. I'm like, okay. But there's the difference between my mother's relationship with me and my father, because my mother, I would say, is rather emotionally absent. Like, she's amazing in other ways, and she's supportive in other ways, but emotionally is not one of them. So I'm not as close to her in that sense. But yeah, so my father isn't like the best at communication. So it's funny because my mother is the one that is better at keeping in contact with me when I'm far away, like in a different country or not with either of them. My mother is better at keeping tabs and checking up on me. My father's really bad at communication, but when I do see him, the quality of our conversation is the best. Like, we still do our father-daughter nights where he will drive, we go on a cruise, and we talk about everything, and then we go to Tim Hortons in Canada. Oh my god, I miss that place, and get any donuts that I want, and vanilla coffee. Oh my god, I love the vanilla. And we really have the best, most deepest conversations, and he gives great advice. He's such a level-headed person, and he's so intelligent, and he's very personable and just gives great advice. He's great to talk to, and he's really sentimental. Like, the cards he gives people, like, they'll have you in tears. Like, he's such a good writer as well. But that's why I'm not so, I don't take it personally when he doesn't reach out all the time, you know, and we barely talk when I'm gone, because when I do see him, it's really meaningful, and it really means a lot to me. And he always gives me money when I see him, typical dad, like making sure I'm okay. And yeah, that's that. I don't know if what I told you has anything to do with how I grew up. Like, I don't see anything that really sticks out of why I would be woke. I'm not sure. But all I can say is that growing up, my father has always been like a hero to me. And well, I guess the obvious, yeah, he was a hero to me. But there's also times I hated him. But who doesn't hate their parents when they're teenagers? But at the end of the day, I've always respected him. And he always had his shit together. And although we argued, we disagreed a lot when I was older, I have wonderful memories of when I was really little. Okay, there's another memory I have. When I was like 8, he would always, this is the thing, that's the difference between my mom and him. My mom, it's like she's more like, she'll talk to me more, but we don't actually have like in-depth heart to heart ever. So it's like she's more present, but the actual connection's not there. Whereas my father, when he is there, he goes out of his way to make plans with me, and that's what really meant a lot to me as a kid. Like, every weekend we'd have our father-daughter weekend, and he'd take me bowling with his friends, and he'd let me rent a movie with him, and I would get to choose, and he let me watch really scary adult horror films, like for rated R, like really gory, and you know, meant for adults. But I was so like in love with horror films, and I still am. And that's why I'm so desensitized. I'm always searching for ones to scare me, because my father used to let me watch all the scary ones when I was really little. He let me watch from the age of 5 years old. I was watching like Chucky, Friday the 13th, and was that Halloween? Yeah, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, all those good ones. And I would always want to fall asleep in his room, and he'd always be like, no, you should sleep in your own bed, because he didn't want me to be wimpy and weak. So when I did fall asleep while watching a movie, I'd always wake up in my own bed and be like, because he saw that I was very attached to him when I was a kid, and I used to call him at work all the time. But these movie nights, the nights he let me stay up late and pick a movie and hang out, like those little things were like a big deal to me. And I have such vivid memories of that. And we used to play Nintendo together, and he bought me my favorite games for my birthday and stuff like that. So there was a lot of gestures that he did that were very meaningful. And he knows that he wasn't the best father, but the reason his shortcomings were due to his age, him being kind of immature, too young, not really ready to be a father. But considering all that, he did a great job. Even through all the fights and the disagreements, he still was a positive figure in my life. And I understand now why he was so protective. Like, having a daughter, that's a scary thing. Having a kid is a scary thing. You're gonna worry all the time. Especially me being a girl and sometimes rebellious, he was worried, and he had every right to be. And he's probably the reason why I didn't lose my virginity too early, because I had my father's conscience in the top of my head. I would never do anything. I have such high standards for myself because he had high standards for me. You know, people ask, you know, you were in Vegas, why didn't you ever strip? I'm like, apart from me making my father feel like he failed if I ever told him what I did, if I went into that profession, I would have lost all respect for myself. And I am not saying I'm above strippers, I'm looking down on them. I have known a lot of strippers and ex-strippers due to living in Vegas, and it's a fucking toxic industry, and nobody ever has anything good to say about it who works there. So no, it's not me looking down on the profession, but I feel sorry for those girls. And you know, they can say, you can meet the ones that say, oh, it's liberating and I love the job. A lot of it's bullshit. I've never met a stripper who wasn't drug addicted or who wasn't in a desperate situation. Like, self-respecting girls will not want to be grinding their ass and pussy against some disgusting guy at a club who's paying for that. Real men don't pay for women, and I'm a strong advocate of that. And my father raised me better than that, and I would rather be doing anything than having to go to that level. At the end of the day, I'm glad that I can always be honest with what I do and be completely open with him, and he's proud of me, and that just makes me really happy. And when I finished law school, he wrote me this really long card, and it was really, really nice. I'll read it. So here are some photos. This was my father. He always used to like these crop shirts that were popular in the late 80s, early 90s or whatever, but he still wears them. There's me, and there's my dad. This is a picture of his brother, my uncle, holding me, who is also muscly, and my father is the taller one. And there's another picture of me when I was like 5. I think I was 5 years old here. Yeah. And if you've got any questions about anything I mentioned today, please let me know in the comments box below, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.